Hey, Steve Petrotto, thanks for coming on, man, to the Interrupted Podcast. It's good to have you.
Hey man, yeah, appreciate it. It's been a while since we last saw each other in person, so it's good to get back together.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how it came about getting to meet you out at Oshkosh, and then just how it's weird how networks just form, and you get to meet different people, and
Yeah,
it was really cool how this all came together. But I feel like you've quite literally been around the world here since we last saw each other.
that's true. Yeah, I definitely have. It's been a whirlwind couple of months. I'm on the back end of, well, pretty much done now for the season for travel. So, with my job, I get to go to a lot of different cool places, and yeah, I just got back from Germany a couple weeks ago. Actually, this weekend I'm headed to the Bahamas for a couple days, so that'll be
Oh,
fun.
really? Oh, right on.
But yeah, I'll be back, and then hopefully that's probably enough travel for a while.
Awesome, man. Well, I have a feeling this is you're going to be really kicking off the fall season for the Nerf podcast. So it's kind of cool. The followers have kind of kept up a little bit with YouTube and on my social media have seen this crazy hobby that Steve Hallman has now gotten back
Sure,
into,
sure.
which is pretty cool because of the conversation that we're going to have today. But before we really get into it and just how we met and some of the dynamics there, would you just kind of give a little overview of your current job right now that you have, and that might give a little teaser to where we're going.
Yeah, for sure. So my title is the Director of Brand Experience for Horizon Hobby. And if you don't know what Horizon Hobby is, we are quite literally the largest in the world from a radio control developer, designer, distributor. So all things RC. And when I mean RC, I don't mean the television remote. I mean airplanes, cars, boats, everything that has to do with the hobby of radio control. We're involved in some way or another, or at least involved in corollary markets like radio systems and servos and that sort of thing. So my job today is it recently changed. Actually, at AirVenture, they had just talked to me about moving into a different role, and I was the director of brand marketing, director of marketing prior to that. Moved over to the brand side of the house. We've done some restructuring, so now they have me focused on events specifically,
Okay.
retail engagement, and other new projects coming up, and then overall brand experience for Horizon and all of our brands. So I get to still play with the product side of the house. I'm not so much
Sure.
focused on product launches anymore,
Okay.
but I still get to be involved in how the customer engages with us and with our products. So it's a lot of fun for me. It's a really unique role in the fact that I get to help shape what that looks like, and I really love doing that because I've always been an advocate for making sure this hobby is accessible to so many people, and you've probably
Sure.
experienced some of that.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a really fun new role.
Well, no, that's awesome. And right at the end, you hit the key, the accessibility to it, because hopefully the listeners will kind of hear some of what I have found the importance to me personally, being the hobby, which I've shared a little bit with you prior to our conversation today. But that is what struck me, the accessibility to this hobby, because you can probably speak to it a lot better than I can. But just thinking about, a big kid with a toy, like I've almost in some ways, Steve, been as I tell people, I was kind of like, do I need to tell certain people that like what I am doing in my off time? Like, it's a weird experience. But you know what I found is people are like, man, that is awesome. Like, I
Yeah.
see the engagement you're having. I see. I just put out a post to my kids on Sunday. We were over doing a maiden on a new jet, and like it has really brought the family in. It's given me an escape, which I want to get in and talking about. But the accessibility, and then really what Horizon has allowed a guy like me to come back into a hobby is pretty incredible. How do you guys really tackle that as an organization, even you personally?
Mhm.
And if you would even share some of how you got into RC
Yeah.
with, what we're driving at in this experience of a really cool hobby.
Yeah, so I'll start with how I got in. I'll make it short. But I started off in the hobby. A friend of mine, and I think I was in school or high school, brought in a RC Car Action magazine, which is
Okay,
still a popular magazine today, one of the largest surface magazines out there, so for cars and boats and that sort of thing.
sure.
And we flipping through, and I, got excited about it and told my dad. And my father wasn't in it. And a lot of times we see in the hobby that fathers pass this on to their kids. For me, it was the other way. I got my dad a little bit into it, at least by force. But he
Sure.
helped me get into it through I bought I think a Traxxas Stampede was my first vehicle,
Oh my goodness.
and then
Okay.
got into that, and then started doing Traxxas T-Max racing down in Georgia at a place that no longer exists called the Sugar Bowl. It was a really large
Hmm.
off-road and on-road racing place in Sugar Hill, Georgia. So got into that, got really deep into the car side, learned the air side through working for a hobby town when I was about 16, my first job.
Okay.
So started out with a hobby town. They had just built one in my town. And it was just a great place for me to learn the air side. Taught myself how to fly with Real Flight, the G3 version, while I was working. They had it set up. So as a kid, of course, you're gonna
Sure.
play. But did that, got into the hobby, and then everything went from there. But as an organization, we focus on accessibility so much because we were so large in the fact that we have a team of engineers, a team of product developers, a team of marketers that are really engaged in the hobby. We have great vendors that work with us that have engineering resources as well. And what we found through Horizon, Horizon started out as a distributor. They were
Okay.
a hobby distributor. They had no real intentions of getting into proprietary products. Then that slowly evolved over time. And initially, what really was the catalyst to Horizon becoming what they are today was a product called the Firebird. It was a hobby zone product. It was called the Firebird,
Okay.
and it really revolutionized how easy it was to learn to fly. Back
Hmm.
then, if you flew it today, you'd probably like this thing, not very good. But back then, it was incredible.
Sure.
And so they got into that and said, hey, there's a niche here, there's a market here for people who want to get into this hobby, who don't want to build out of stick and tissue and spend all winter building and hopefully it flies in the summer and go through that whole, roller coaster of
Yeah.
emotions and work. And so that's kind of how it really snowballed from there. That was super successful. They had multiple iterations of that. And so today, for us, it's all about, yeah, how do we make this as easy as possible?
Hmm.
And we do that through technological innovations. You see things like our stabilization systems, which are very easy to get you into flying. Frankly, that really changed the game again. First, it was the easy to put together. Then it was the technology. Now we're looking at systematically across the board. Is it easier to charge your batteries? Taking away all of the pain points that people have. And I'm
Hmm.
sure you've noticed a few of those getting into the hobby. And for
Absolutely.
those of
Yeah.
those people listening, like there's so many things that you're like, I don't know if I want to get into that. It seems expensive, seems, scary, has a lot of
Yeah.
investment, but we're slowly trying to knock those off the pegboard because that's what stops people from getting in the hobby. But yeah, that's it. I mean, there's a team of
Yeah.
guys like me who are diehard hobbyists that work for the
Yeah.
company. And I said it today with my team, like it's kind of cliche to say corporately, but our people are our competitive advantage. And it's true because, like in the Horizon stance, like we wouldn't be where we were if our people weren't involved in the hobby at the level that they are. I
Sure.
always joke and say we're all nerding out at work, but we all know we all live the hobby on the weekends in the evening. As soon as I'm done with this podcast, I'm probably going to go work on my cub. It's just we live it, breathe it, work it, eat it. So
Yeah.
it's a passion. So that's probably why we're so successful, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the community itself, I was actually a little nervous to break into it, being a 41-year-old guy that, you know, grew up loving RC stuff, but never went too deep into it,
Right.
and was just like, man, this is really, really cool stuff. But it was hard when I was a kid. My uncle actually is the one who really paved the way. He had a general aviation pilot, and he got into some hobbying with it. It was like he would show me stuff, and then he got into building foamies. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And I'll tell you what's weird. And back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, almost a decade ago, I was starting to look at stuff again, but I was nervous, right?
Yeah.
To take on a new hobby and all the things that you just addressed, and to bring the point home. Last October for my son's birthday, I got him this little helicopter off Amazon, and we put it up in the living room, and I'm like, wow, this is easy. Uh,
Yeah.
this thing's in the air and easy. And then it started getting me reading a little more and these gyro systems and the innovation that you've been talking about. And I think as I've been trying to communicate the hobby to my friends that have kind of started to see what I'm doing, I'm like, look, you can go as deep as you want into this,
Yeah.
but to get something up in the air or going down the street, there can be a minimal investment to have a lot of fun. And that was shocking to me. It really was. And seeing what Horizon has done with the whole Spektrum universe
Right.
is really quite amazing. But I say that to arrive maybe at the bigger umbrella here. The Interrupted podcast, Steve. I have folks on, and we talk about the things that we can do in life that one bring us joy, where we can really thrive, we can have an impact on people, and there's a level of preparing always for the unknown, and a lot of that is emotional health and resets. And it may kind of seem like a far jump or different than people that maybe have listened to a hobby podcast before, but it really struck me in our conversation when we met out at AirVenture, and I got to share a little bit about this has been really good for me. What do you, as an organization, and even your personal feelings towards it, generally speak like? Where does the hobby fit into life? Do you ever have conversations that like we're in a fun, entertaining industry, but is there a deeper level to that you all get into?
I think well, I'll start with me. I mean, for me personally, yeah, it blends the line from work to hobby. Probably a lot more than most, but for most of us that work here, it does. There
Sure.
are times where, yeah, I don't want to see this hobby, right? I want to go and do something different. Um, but there are times where it is that it's a friendship circle.
Hmm.
It's a release for stress. It's a getaway, whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
For me, it's a time for me to be creative. It's a time for me to challenge myself. So it's multiple things in one for me personally. As an organization, we often look at the personas that are our customers.
Okay.
One of those personas is the we call it the socializer, right? So the person that brings others into the hobby via the hobby.
Mm.
So the person that's out there, like, hey man, you got to try this. I got one here. I'll give you try my truck. Let's go out and drive.
Yeah.
That person is the socializer. They're a huge part of the hobby, as you probably have seen. There are guys out there that want you to fly their plane or want you to drive their car, or just go out and hang and have a beer and drive an RC car in the backyard or whatever.
Absolutely.
Or they break it out at a barbecue. I'm that guy.
Uh-huh.
I bring the boats over to the boating trip on the water.
Yeah.
So there's the socializer. Then we have the person that's the technician. The technician is the DIY, the super detailed guy. He's
Hmm.
not so much bringing others in, but he's maybe teaching others, right? So he's the guy that's the YouTuber. He's the guy at the field or at the track teaching others. And so we do break into those personas. There's other ones that we have. There's the collector and that sort of thing. But the collector is the guy that has to have every single version of whatever airplane.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but we look at that. Then we look at the side of life where Horizon also has a 501(c) called uh, we have it's called Hobbies for Good, and we support an organization called Operation 11 Charlie, who's a veterans organization who uses
Okay.
RC rock crawlers, so like little trucks that crawl over the rocks that are typically imitating full scale. Um, that organization does incredible work with veterans with PTSD, and they induct veterans in that they go out and strictly use RC to give these guys a little bit of a break from reality. And so we're hugely passionate about that project.
Yeah.
Where we support them heavily. And there's other organizations out there. They're one of many, but they're probably one of the ones that come to my mind just because we work closely with them. But that's also what we see as a steward of the hobby. We see
Hmm.
the Horizons place is also to provide that escape for folks, whether it just be an escape from your job or an escape from something more serious. But it's real. I mean, it's so cool to see the stuff I work on all day actually helping somebody in that
Yeah.
regard. It's pretty rewarding. And not every company gets to say that. If you work and sell diapers all day or whatever, you don't get the. I mean, maybe it helps in different ways,
It's
but
in a different way.
it's a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit
Sure.
different, and it's cool to see. And there's so many other ways it's used now where I'm just excited, always excited to see a new use for the hobby. Whether it's, I've even heard of folks using it to do uh, learning to reuse their hands again, or
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
line of sight type stuff, vision coordination. It's used in so many ways today because it's so complex. It can do a lot of different things. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's what I'm finding as I get further into it. There is the the collector side, like I'm into the plane side of it, and the stuff is really cool to see.
Yeah.
You stuff that you're never maybe ever going to touch the full scale version of it, but you take this small piece of it, and even getting into finding the local club and going down there and the guys down there of a wide age range that have experienced many different things, and they just want to share it with you.
Yeah.
They want to experience, something really fun. And at the end of the day, you're taking a, 4 to 8 minute flight in many cases on a
Sure.
plane, and then you're landing, and then you're sitting there just talking about it, and you get into all different things. So no, I definitely hear that. And even in the veteran side, what are some of the feedback that maybe you get in going to these events and talking to new folks into the hobby? What are some of the things that they're expressing early on to you about one, what they love about it, and kind of what's hard about it? And why I think that's important is because even a guy like me just trying to share it with other folks, or that accessibility point is like, hey, these are some hurdles maybe new folks experience with the hobby, but this is how I see people overcome them.
Yeah, I mean the when I go to I try to get to events where I'm incognito, right? Because a lot of people know me in the industry,
Okay,
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
try to
yeah.
go to events and just talk to people as Steve, the random guy at the field. It's often not often I can do that, but when I do get to talk to people, a lot of the feedback is always, the what got me into this product was how easy it was, how accessible it was. A lot of it is the product support side of things. As much as we always say internally, you never want to have somebody use product support. Having a really solid product support team is important for the organization.
Hmm.
Um, but that, and then the like on the flying side, right? It's all about the tech inside, the new
Yeah.
smart stuff that we have, which is amazing from a telemetry standpoint. And not to get too into the weeds for those of
Yeah.
your listeners that get into that, but it makes it so much easier to know how much more fuel, quote unquote, you have on board your airplane when it comes to a battery, to know how if you're getting too far away, to know if you need to land. And there's all these little things that make life easier. And on the
Hmm.
car side, we've got stabilization systems now too that makes it just better to drive. Just like your full size automobile has ABS brakes and traction control. We've got that now, sort of, in RC cars. All those things that trickle down are really cool. And so that feedback is always, you made it easy for me. You made it accessible for me. You made it, yes, as far as accessible, you made it just generally better, an overall better experience. Or you get the guy that's like, I came back to the hobby after 10, 15, X number of years
Right.
because now it's so much easier. Or my dad did it and I want to get back to that feeling of enjoyment and do it with my kids. We see a lot of that. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question fully,
Yeah,
but
no, no, it does get at it, and really the overarching thing here is one is getting into a hobby and having a connection with a company like Horizon that I'm only even after a year starting to just get a glimpse of how I believe customer focus that your company is, and what I'm experiencing on the consumer end. As if
sure.
I need information, I not only can go and buy a product, but I can actually learn something too. And for me, that's a big, as we are constantly consuming information now because it's coming at us so fast, when you can really focus in and have a trusted resource and then be able to consume it, it helps me learn, and it helps
Right.
me also teach as well. And I'm seeing that. Would you talk a little bit about maybe on the personal side of some of the flying that you do? I know you just were competitive with it and had some
Mhm.
success there. And would you talk maybe a little bit about something I'm not real well versed in? Some of the competitive elements to this hobby. It's not just like heading to the field and flying fun. There's actually people that really go hard into this and are pretty exceptional at it.
Yeah, so the competitive space for the air side of the business is, I would call it a little bit confusing for the newbie because the AMA, who's the lobbying body for RC aviation, that helps us lobby with the FAA and keep things going, and also an insurance body. They have a nationals campaign, I'll call it. So it's all the different segments of air, whether it's sailplanes to racing planes to combat planes to scale, everything. There's a national contest for it.
Okay.
It's hard to say like, oh well, I'm the national champion in pylon racing. That guy is not going to have the same skill set as someone like me who flies scale. But at least all of us are national champions within our category. So for me personally, I've competed long ago. I when I first started Horizon, I did helicopters. I was really into that for a while. Still am, but don't do it as much. But the heli side of things, I was the sportsman national champion for helicopter aerobatics at one point, which is like the lowest class. And that got me excited about it because it was easy to do. Like for me, it was easy. I was competing against people who may or may not have flown for as long as I did. And so I felt like I was beating up on people who were not as skilled as I was. And it was easy to get that. But then you immediately have to move up to the pro classes immediately. It's kind of like in shooting sports where you can start in the novice class, but as soon as you get any sort of points, you got to move up. Right.
Okay.
And so in the competitive space that exists, there's this part of the sport that I'm passionate about in the competitive side is what they call scale flying. It sounds really boring, and in some cases it is, but you're using the aircraft, you're getting points on the aircraft specifically. So whether the aircraft is equal to the scale counterpart, so the full size version, and
Yep.
also are you flying it in the manner in which the full size flies? Is it
Okay.
believable? Are you doing the maneuver? And while some of that may seem easy, like I flew a Cub, so I'm the 2024 national champion for scale class one, which is aircraft without retracts. So I flew a 40% Cub, Red Bull Cub, same scheme as the one that landed on the Dubai tower.
Uh-huh.
And so, you fly that, you have to do all the maneuvers. You may think, well, takeoff, landing, touch and goes, pattern work. That's what a Cub does. Maybe a stall turn if you want to get fancy. But doing it in a way that it looks real and is all perfectly smooth and looks like you're at
Hmm.
AirVenture watching someone fly is actually really challenging. And so for me, it's
Sure.
fun to piece together something that looks nice, like an actual aerobatic routine or a flight routine, and then do it in a way that the aircraft doesn't bobble around and shake around like you see an average guy flying a trainer at the field. So that's
Right.
that's been fun to me. There's also um, the jet side of things or the pattern side of things. So turbines, they have their own like aerobatic classes, that sort of thing. You can fly turbines in scale. The pattern community, which is an aerobatic style flying where there's very difficult maneuvers that's all about precision. So you're doing, 45-degree upline, snap roll into a turn, into a roll, into a S turn, into another snap roll. There's all these really complex maneuvers that for
Sure.
me it's impressive to see, extremely boring to watch. But when you're
Hmm.
doing it, it's a lot of fun. There's other parts, and that's just me personally. I visited the combat control line combat. Didn't know it existed. Control line, if those of you may have heard, people back in the day would fly airplanes on a line in a circle, right?
That was the first
That's
one I had.
yeah. So there's a thing nowadays called control line combat where two guys go out in the same circle and run around and try to hit each other or hit the tail off the other, hit the streamer off the other one. But it's
Oh
like a
my
full
goodness.
contact sport. These guys are wrestling each other to the ground. It's really cool to watch. So that's fun. So yeah, there's a ton of different ways. 2016, I went to the 2016, I went to the drone nationals. This is back when drones were getting really big.
Hmm.
Horizon sponsored some drone racing guys and sent me and a coworker who still works with me today up to the New York Nationals. And because we were a sponsor, they're like, "Hey, you guys get 2 slots to fly if you want to compete." And we're like, "Yeah, I mean, okay, fine, we'll throw down." So
Sure.
we brought up bind and fly wings. These back in the days of the E-flite uh, Sea Ray or something. I forget whatever. An E-flite bind and fly plane. We stuck cameras on. And we're like, we'll just figure it out.
Eh,
We got fifth nationally, the two of us, fourth and fifth. So we're like, all right, we
no
can do
way.
better. So then we got invited to the Worlds, which unfortunately has never happened again. But the
Okay.
Worlds down in Hawaii, they flew at the same place the Jurassic Park movie was filmed. So it's
Okay.
beautiful, beautiful ranch down
Sure.
there. And the week long thing, Hawaii flew us down there. We built, of course, we used development resources and built the most badass wing you could possibly make. So we were easily doing. I think our top speed was like 170 miles an
Really?
hour,
Holy
and
cow.
we had all of our stabilization systems on there. It wasn't against the rules. Like we could do everything. We shoved the largest possible batteries in this plane.
I was gonna say, what kind
Got
of power system was in
it
that?
was a I think it was six. No, it was 6S. No, it was 4S. 4S system with a heli motor on the back of it. And so we were, and it was like a parallel battery system. It was just all to get the weight to the front. We had this huge
Uh-huh.
motor off the back, trying to get more weight in the front.
No way.
Anyway, it was all new stuff, and we got first and second in the world with those wings. So we came from like just trying it out, and it really sparked my competitive spirit. It really showed how much work you actually had to put into a competition to do well. Like we spent months
Uh-huh.
preparing for that
Oh my
thing,
goodness. Oh, that's
developing,
cool.
blowing airplanes up every weekend, trying to figure out the best combination of speed and agility. And then we started setting up courses, and down there it was super cool because there's big gates to fly through, and you're flying through Jurassic
Wow.
Park basically. It was
Sure.
really a
Yeah,
cool
yeah, yeah.
experience. Anyway, so that whole side of the sport is really neat. So that's what they call today FPV wing racing or FPV racing, drone racing.
Understand.
With the
Sure.
drone side, but the wings are a little less popular. I'm not sure why, because it's way cooler to watch,
Uh-huh.
but it's a lot less people doing it. And ESPN didn't pick up wing racing; they picked up drone
That
racing, so it became more popular. But
sure.
anyway, yeah. So that, competitive sport is really cool. And the car side, there's the car racing, there's rock crawling competitions,
Yeah.
there's monster truck like Monster Jam style monster trucks where you do have toll booth racing. You have freestyle judging, that sort of thing. There's drifting now, which I've gotten a little bit into just to experience it, like drift RC drifting inside. So drift cars where it's all based on precision and kind of style. So yeah, it's anything really, anything you can
Yeah.
compete with, and it takes a level of hobbying that you wouldn't believe what the preparation you put into something like that. I put in
Yeah.
a lot of time in preparing for the nationals and a lot of time there and a lot of time flying. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now with your scale Cub, that one. Now I take it in scale flying. There's no gyro system at
Mm-mm.
all. No, not
No,
necessarily.
there's no rules against it. In fact, in a few years ago, it was like people were I would say maybe not. People just didn't love the idea of it because they felt like it was taking over the flight and doing it for
Oh,
you.
okay.
But in reality, all a gyro is doing is making the airplane fly true, and taking away the bumps of the wind that you would not typically see in a full size airplane because it's so
Hmm.
heavy. There's so much mass. So it's almost like a mass cheat code, in my opinion. Yes, it makes the airplane fly truer and cleaner, and you don't have to fight certain things. But there's no rules against it. And
Okay.
in the
Awesome.
3D aerobatic space where the guys are doing freestyle aerobatics, they don't like them because it actually limits them. So it limits their ability to throw the airplane around its own tail or whatever. But in the scale world, it's completely acceptable. And like I said, it's not actually doing the work for you. It's just making it look a little cleaner. So yes, do I have a competitive advantage? Sure, 100%. But everyone's using it now, so everyone's on the same playing field
Right.
within reason.
Well, I inadvertently started learning about that with just I guess the priority setting within the gyro and when it actually takes over, if I'm understanding that correctly, with like the AS3X system.
Yep.
And so I was actually having trouble. I got a just real basic 3D. I was like, I kind of want to see this, what it does and how it reacts. And I couldn't get to do certain things. I didn't realize
Mm.
that I had way too much gain into the plane, and just
Yeah.
learning curve for the somebody doesn't know any better.
Sure.
But it is interesting how that takes over. But really, I think what's interesting about the competitive side is yes, you're out there competing against other people, but consistently, even when I go to the field and no one is there, it's almost like this competition with myself. And
Mm.
I'm an adrenaline junkie. Like I like get crazy. I like to challenge myself. I want something to be hard, and it's weird with the fine motor skills and the mental challenge of just going up there. It's like I want to something 300 feet away from me to do this.
Hmm.
I want it to react in a way that it's not right when you are 10 years old playing Mortal Kombat and you just hit as many buttons as you can and hope the outcome was
Right.
good, right? If you can, because I was that video gamer, but
Hmm.
this is quite literally that no, I'm going to create input to get a very specific output, and that challenge, and then working through that is pretty awesome, and part of what I enjoy about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many variables, right? I mean, it's every you think, oh, it's a flight, you're taking off and landing. Your brain. It's. Have you ever ridden? Are you into motorcycles at all?
Yes, I
So
grew up in a biker family.
okay. So when you're on a bike, right? And I
Yep.
learned to ride, I don't know, 10 years ago, or whatever. So it wasn't super early in life, but when you're riding, you don't really have time or energy to think about anything else than riding. And
Yeah.
so an escape, but I think RC flying is the same thing. And in my experience, is there isn't a moment where you can not think about what you're doing because you'll crash or something will happen. So for me, it's that like you are 110% focused and you're in locked in.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same way when you're learning to fly. I know it's this way. I was learning doing some pilot training, and yeah, 100, you're 110% locked in. Your brain is full capacity running what you're doing, whether it's flying an RC airplane or driving a motorcycle or flying a real plane. And that right there is the excitement, but also B, what makes it so challenging to do it well and not
Yeah.
just go up, flip around, do a couple rolls and land. Like if you really try to go out next time you go fly, go say, I'm going to go do these 5 maneuvers in a row and string
Uh-huh.
them together and make it look real. And you'll be like, holy crap, that's actually harder than I thought it was. Rather than just doing a couple flybys and a loop here and there and making it up as you go out with a plan and actually try to complete that back to back to back to back and land and make it look pretty all in one. And then imagine
Yeah.
having judges look at you and writing down behind your back
Yeah, yeah,
someone
yeah,
calling you. I mean, it adds a
yeah.
lot. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it's a different level of competition. Sure, I would call it maybe not as adrenaline pumping as other sports, but it
No,
certainly
no.
it gets you kind of thinking and gets you a little amped up every time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I will say for me, and maybe it's just because I'm new to it, the heart rate will go up.
Yeah, oh, 100%. It does for me too.
It's like, oh man, how's this gonna go? Especially a newer plane, and
Yeah.
how quickly you can progress. I think because you're
Yeah.
getting constant feedback, hopefully not by the ground, but you are
Yeah.
getting that constant feedback, which is exciting, right? You're
Right.
going through those motions. I think that's like your ability, what you said, to be present is what has sucked me in.
Hmm.
And that is a great way because one of my other hobbies and passions is hunting and archery. And I think I shared this with you out at Oshkosh that those 15 seconds of when you're at full draw and you're focusing on your sight and nothing else is in your mind. And yes, maybe I'm escaping from reality for a minute, but the
Sure.
reality that is those 15 seconds is a constant reset. And
Hmm.
the first time I experienced what the RC flying was in that world was the first time I crashed was because someone walked by my driveway, said, "Oh man, that's awesome." And I tried to talk to them, and the next thing I knew I had foam all over the ground. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like it was I broke concentration from that to focus on something else, and just like that, I got disoriented and I messed up,
Yeah.
and but in the same, that was exciting in the same outright just because I realized what this is. I was like, whoa, this I'm not thinking about the work that day or the problem that's going on at home or the
Hmm.
what I have to do. It's even if you go out to the field for 30 minutes, run down the street and it's like, hey, I'm gonna put 2 batteries through this thing. It's like
Yeah.
I know that that's a really good time, and I think people listening that have done this before can relate to that
Yeah.
those
For sure.
moments.
Yeah,
But
it gets easier, right? I mean, I found that maybe it's because I'm in the industry and maybe, we're out flying for work. You're either talking while you're flying,
sure,
helping somebody do something else, or get called to the line to help land some plane that has some major issue that someone's not confident in flying. All those of us that are on Team Horizon are, known as helpers in the field. So we all are sponsored pilots, and we have a team of I think about 300 in the U.S.
really, is that what it is?
Yeah, it's quite a bit. We added a bunch this last year. We upgraded all of our ambassador guys. Anyway, the point I was making is, that we're often pulled into like crazy situations where it's like it's 10 things going on at once, and you got to land. The last one I was pulled into was actually at our own event in our C Fest. One of our employees was flying the same type of Cub that I have. He was borrowing it, and it got really windy, like out of nowhere, and he like completely freaked out. Like he could not. He's like, I cannot land this. Somebody needs to land this, and he's like actually having a panic attack. I mean, it's a $7,000 airplane, and he's like freaking out. And it was dark, and I was like, just give me the remote, and I'm just landing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm actually talking to the crowd in the microphone and landing his plane while I'm doing the MC of it. And so like you get to a point where you can do that,
Yeah,
which I
you're
think is cool
multitasking.
that you've got that muscle memory that that mental
That
faculty about what you're doing. That's no big deal, you know.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. That muscle memory is you get into an automatic system that it's for basic maneuvers and things you need to do. You start your brain and your hands just start working in tandem, and
Hmm.
and you complete it. And that's how, I tell people I've been doing this for 10 months, right? Since
Yeah,
I started flying a hobby level plane, right? And it's the growth in that time of going from basic high wing trainers to what, less than a month ago I flew my first EDF jet,
yeah,
and
nice.
like that was just incredible. When I got in the hobby, I mean, my fascination was with the EDFs, and I was like, I want to fly that, and I was like, I am not ready to fly that yet. Just the speed at which
Sure,
things
yeah,
happen.
right.
Now, what I will say is, I picked up. I had actually won a F4 off of a raffle, a $25 raffle ticket. I was like,
Nice.
this was like something I'm going to buy way down the road. And I put this thing together. I'm like, I need to figure out how to fly this thing. And so I got one of the 70 millimeter Vipers off of a guy. He was getting rid of it. It had been crashed once and had some damage. But I was like, well, I don't have to worry about putting a beauty mark on it.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so with that, it was up in the air, and it was like, man, the once you learn that orientation and basic stick, the stuff does, it translates from plane to plane. They have different, they respond differently, but
Sure.
it does translate. It just happens a lot faster when you're
Yeah,
going that
happens
fast.
faster. You know, different airplanes are less forgiving or more forgiving in certain places. You know, there's a lot of things that you have to consider when it comes to, we're flying in the same air that real jet airliners are flying. But we're flying models that are way scaled down. Air doesn't scale. But we always joke at the office, like physics doesn't scale, right? So you're trying to make a model airplane fly really well in the same air that's flying at, a full size airplane. It's actually pretty difficult. But yeah, they all have different characteristics. That's why we do have products that are designed for the beginner,
Uh huh.
products that are designed to transition, and products that are designed for more of the expert guy. They all have an intent to be relatively easy to use, but you slap a guy, it's just like you don't learn to fly in a jet airplane. You learn to fly in a Cessna 182 or whatever.
Right.
It's
Yep.
got a lot more a lot more characteristics, better for the stall or better to land, easier to take off. But yeah, when you want to really start having fun, then you got to step up into the fast stuff.
Yeah.
or
No.
the bigger stuff. I mean, I love flying my big Cub because it's 55 pounds. It's 136-inch wingspan, so it's
Wow.
big airplane.
Yeah.
But it flies slow, but it's just so it's got energy and inertia. You can really throw it into turns. Like that experience, and versus like a high wing trainer, like a Cub trainer, not
Right.
even the same thing. It's yes, I can hand you the sticks, and while you'd be very nervous to fly it, you would be successful because you're like, oh, this once you get past we call it the emotional debt of the in the plane. It's like once you get past the emotional debt,
I
it's
like
fine.
that.
It's good
Yeah.
to fly. It's a lot
Yeah.
of fun,
Yeah.
but
No.
that's hard to get. I got into turbines this year, and I that was a step in the hobby I hadn't taken yet in all the years I've
Wow.
been in it. Got my turbine waiver, and that the first couple, even today, even when I fire up the turbine today, it's like, all right, this is an expensive toy,
Yeah.
and it can cause a lot of damage, not just to the airplane, but to property.
Yeah.
And you really you have to be locked in. So for me, that gets me back to probably where you're at when you're flying that ADF, that same state of mind where you cannot think about anything else. But obviously my years of experience overcome that quickly. But yeah, that same feeling. It's like that's why action sports guys always crave the next crazy
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
skydiving.
How
Okay,
can I
how can I
scale it?
skydive on fire now? There's it's like how do you get that next high? But that's what the hobby has kind of become for me is okay. And a couple weeks ago, I got to fly a $25,000 turbine jet, and they just handed me the radio, and I was shaking,
Uh huh.
and I was like, all right, this is real. This is real money. This isn't insured. This is my fault if it crashes. So like obviously it would have sucked if it crashed out, but it was just a fun experience to be like, oh wow,
I'm
this is
sure.
real now, and it was just wow, it's super
Unbelievable.
super cool experience.
Yeah, no, that had to be, man. Well, I've never been to a place and watched the turbine ones go yet, which
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to seeing those, just because I love watching the videos of them. But I mean, just the speed at which these planes are now able to go, and how
Yeah.
well they do handle, is pretty phenomenal. But what I'm obviously immersed in it right now. I'm captivated by the hobby. I'm trying to learn and digest as much as I can, on both, just what the planes do, the technology in them, but I'm also fascinated by the technology in the radio systems as well. What is it? Just me, being around it and being more aware of it, or is the hobby actually growing? What are you seeing in the industry right now? Because it feels like it's, wow, maybe this thing did go through a lull, and is it resurging, or is it just me being more aware of what's going on?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, the
Okay.
hobby is growing, no doubt. Again, accessibility equals entrance into the hobby. Um, we also see I'll call it the older generation no longer being around to fly what they were doing. So I think we're filling in the gaps, right? The younger generation or the newer folks are coming in. The older ones are, for lack of a better word, dying off,
Uh
literally.
huh. Yeah. Yeah.
But we're building out this group of engaged enthusiasts again. And for a while, I feel like that what there wasn't new entrants. It was a bunch of people came in. Then there was like the call it the technological hobby transformation where people just didn't care. They want to play video games or whatever. I mean, frankly, my generation, I grew up playing video games. In college, I played video games. I had the RC hobby to pull me out of that. Um, but I think we're also seeing it. The air side certainly is probably the most stable business we have. It's very consistent. The surface, we call it surface, so the car side,
Uh
is
huh.
the growth for us as a company.
Okay.
We also see growth uh, in like the overall accessories, the smart technology, that type of thing, the batteries, the chargers. But those support if one side's growing, those are going to grow no matter what, right? Because they're supporting all sides of it. They're supporting the cars and the airplanes. Helis, I would say, have been on a decline for years.
Okay.
Since 2015, 16, 17, Helis peaked hard. And then for whatever reason, the technology hit a point where they were so freaking good that nobody else could really come in and do it better for a while. And
Okay.
since then, some technological advancement have come along, but for the most part, a heli has been a heli, and there's really not that much excitement there. I think that has to do with just what they are, but there's still
Okay.
plenty of guys flying helis. The airplane side, turbine, I mentioned turbine. Turbine's on a huge growth trajectory right now. As
Okay.
much as it is really expensive to get into turbines, Horizon just released recently, I said just released, about a year ago, released our first turbine capable aircraft. So it's an ARF, almost ready to fly kit. It's the MB339. It's what I learned to fly on. We have sold way more than we ever expected to sell of those.
Really? Okay.
And so what that tells me is there's people that, again, accessibility. It was inexpensive. It's easy to build. We did videos on how to set it up and all that. There's videos out there on how to put the turbine in. We broke a threshold that was there, which was I don't know. I don't want to spend this money on this turbine. I don't know how to install it. How do I deal with? There's all these wires.
Sure.
But once you break that, now you got a guy in the hobby that's now a turbine guy, like me. I got into turbines. Now I'm searching for what's the next one I'm going to buy,
Uh
which of
huh.
course is as is the lovely part of the hobby is
Uh
once
huh.
you get
There's
used
always
to
one
one or
more.
master one, there's always another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
We see growth there. Um, so yeah, like I said, the car side is crazy growing right now. I mean, it's
Really?
just
Okay.
booming because it is the most accessible form of RC.
Okay.
Anybody from a 2 year old to a 50 or 60 year old, 100-year old can do it.
And for the most
Um,
part, you're probably not going to render it completely broken for one little mess up.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's the hurdle rate for learning is nothing, right? Anybody can grab the radio and drive it around. You may whiskey throttle it off the end of the curb or whatever, but for the most part, anybody can do it. And so we see more and more kids getting into the hobby. It's how I started, right? And so you
Hmm.
see more and more people getting into the hobby with that. And then which is cool because Horizon's involved in literally everything. We see the transition from a surface customer to maybe an air customer. And so you see that where that guy joins on one side of the hobby and maybe ends up somewhere else, or even joins on the air side, maybe doesn't love it and goes to the car side. And we also have the train business, which I wouldn't really call it RC, but we do have Athearn trains,
But
which
that's
is
big
standard
hobby, and
trains,
yeah.
huge. I can't tell you how many posts I've seen about this, the big boy steam engine that's going around the country right now.
Uh huh.
Real one. It's the only one left, the 1 million pound steam engine that's running. But I didn't realize how many train enthusiasts there are in the world. But when that stuff comes out, it's interesting. But that business has been extremely stable for us too. You would think,
Okay.
oh, model trains, like nobody does that anymore. It's a very stable business. We have lots of train puns. It's always on track. The train business is on rails, but it really is a stable business. And so there's a lot of things like that. But yeah, the hobby is, I would say, as a whole, growing. The air category probably appears to be growing because we see so much more product innovation too. It's
Yeah.
vendors are getting really good, factories are getting really good at building good models that are accepted by the masses, which also helps breed people coming in and buying more. I think the FAA stuff has really hurt it, and it would be way bigger than what it would be, frankly, if
Yeah.
that did not happen. But every time we see a news cycle, you always see a little dip, right? You see you can only fly your airplanes at these specific places, dip in sales, at least temporarily, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, the hobbyist understands the rules and is going to follow them within reason. And I think it's minimal. I hate that these regulations have hurt the hobby,
Yeah.
but it is hopefully something that won't be terrible in the future. And I mean, I go to different countries, right? There's all kinds of different regulations. But anyway, yeah, that definitely doesn't help. But the rest of the side of the hobby, fantastic. So yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, no, for sure. What I have a lot of educators that watch and listen to the podcast. Obviously, there's a natural correlation to STEM with
Sure.
this
Oh
hobby.
yeah.
Like, I mean, it is just it's in your face, and I mean, when you get into electronics, the battery technology, circuitry. When you get into aerodynamics, physics, and on the plane side, well, also on the surface side, there's so much there. Would you just kind of talk to the teachers? Are you aware of certain programs or integration or things that any educators should be aware of about maybe how to integrate this hobby into a classroom, other than hey, put a paper airplane together and fly it? Or anything that Horizon's working on or has been a part of or aware of?
Is I've always wanted Horizon to get deep into STEM. I would say we're a part of it unknowingly, right? There are teachers and educators using RC in some of our products to do that. There are companies that are smaller than us that have the energy to do small projects that are building inexpensive kits and that sort of
Yeah,
thing. Flight Test is a brand that I'm sure, and if you're in education and you've done STEM, you've heard of Flight Test. Flight Test has a great product in the sense that A, they're a really great educator themselves, but B, they have a product that's like cardboard that you can kind of glue together with hot glue, slap a motor on it. You can design something crazy, or you can just build one of their models. It allows children or kids or anybody to get into the hobby and for really inexpensively. You can have a flying airplane for 150 or less bucks, $100 or $75. For educators, that's great. Obviously, there's lots of cost involved there, so maybe your class can work on one of those. Um, but the AMA also has STEM programs.
okay.
They work with the UAS for STEM group. I guess it's kind of one and the same in a sense, but UAS for STEM is a big program that I think tries to bring a lot of kids in to the hobby using, autonomous systems. There's a UAS for STEM thing at AirVenture, which I never get to go watch, but I've always
It,
wanted to go watch it. Big contest out there. And I think for if I was a teacher in today's world, find something that find what you're going to teach. But the hobby is really is so easy to get a really inexpensive radio. You don't need to buy a fancy radio system. You can have an airplane or something flying for less than $100. That's actually pretty good these days. You used to not be able to say that.
yeah,
So that's good. That I don't know. I
yeah,
wish, like I said, I wish Horizon had like a roll up kit. Here you go. And we've talked a lot about it. The challenge for us is doing it and finding it's not one big customer. It's hundreds of thousands of
sure.
customers.
Well,
And
and
so
how does it integrate into? That's prior to my current job. That's I was taught second grade and in education, curriculum
Hmm.
development. And so whenever I see science like that, my head, like, and even this, I just enjoy talking to my 5-year-old son about this stuff. And the vocabulary that he has learned around aviation is insane. Like, he's not going to say that thing that makes it go up and down. He's going to say the elevator. He's going to
Hmm.
say inverted. He's going to say, you know, it's
Sure.
all the language, the building blocks to education that will translate. I mean, the math alone that's involved, I'm sure that you get to experience, at least with your team. I don't know how much in the weeds you get into it, but
Yeah.
I can only imagine in building these systems, the math that goes into the engineering of the product. That I just see the natural correlation, and it's, you know, there's the future of this hobby obviously is going to continue to grow, and that's going to be a big piece of it, in my opinion.
I leave the engineering to the engineers, but I do get involved in the way the product works. But or at least they oftentimes will just hand to me like, "Hey, just go fly us, tell us what you think," and I'll give them feedback, and then they'll do the math side of it. But
Sure.
yeah, and for me, as someone who works within an organization in the hobby, I would love to see more folks doing using RC in STEM. Not only does it, like you said, help kind of really teach really well, as it's
Hmm.
super hands-on, it's super cool. It's kind of like model rockets, right? It's like the
Yeah.
same cool
Yeah.
factor, but it can go so much more than that. You can teach kids from basic stuff to airfoils to weight and balance. I mean, there's obviously it's endless. But for us as an organization, I love to see that because we need more engineers, we need more developers. We always need the new kid on the block that knows how to do the next stabilization system. I mean, our
Yeah.
current stabilization system is a good example. Is was developed AS3X. The original version was developed probably in the 2013 timeframe.
Okay.
It was just modified, and the primary engineer is like I think he's like 31, maybe like
Really.
really early 30s. He's brilliant and works with everybody internally, but he's the guy behind the
Yeah.
scenes doing all the math,
Hmm.
doing all the algorithms and everything. And um, he's just he's an incredible resource. And we've got guys all across the board, but he's like our literally almost our I think he is our youngest engineer, and he's designed a system that I can put up against any other system in the market. We have by far the greatest stabilization system out there for RC, and he obviously developed it with everybody here, and all the input goes into one to make a better product. But he's young. I mean, not 22, but he's super young. It's
Yeah.
cool to see that. He's gotten really good quickly, but he's been immersed in the hobby, and he's learned to fly jets too from it. And it's cool to see him progress, but also then understanding
Yeah.
what he's doing, how it's impacting the hobby.
Yeah.
So
Well, no, I mean, the new Plus system is. I mean, I notice it already. It's just, it's insane, the
yeah,
difference in it.
I flew something that I can't talk about last night, and it is something that you would be like, oh, that's cool, whatever. It's just this type of airplane you wouldn't get too excited about. But when
Right.
I flew it with our new Plus system, and I was like, is this real life? I felt like I was flying real flight simulator. It was not. It was.
Wow.
I was laughing the whole time because I'm like, this shouldn't do this. This shouldn't be able to do this, but it can because the system on board is really supporting the flying. But yeah, it was like an aircraft that shouldn't be flown, but I was flying it like a Pitts, like a biplane. It was just
Wow.
incredible how precise it was. But what excites me there is where that's going to go later on. Like
Hmm.
that precision will then trickle down to the beginner and help them fly and get more people in. And we already have our safe technology, which really helps everybody fly. But
Yeah.
now when you add
That's
the new plus algorithms to that in the future, holy crap, man, it's going to be another world. I mean, we're going to see way more people be more successful. Um, but yeah, it was just you could I told the guys like we should make like the world's worst flying looking airplane and like
make
misshapen
it.
wings, make it all off balance and see if it'll make this thing fly good. And I bet it would, but it's scarily good. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, it's so fast, like that. The way it's just making the adjustments, all the environmental factor adjustments, and then what I'm just getting into, really getting into the programming, and like, okay, now I see how this goes. There's obviously presets that go, but let me make an adjustment and see what happens. And just
Hmm.
because that's just a new challenge that I like to have, and see like, hey, how can I do this? Or some guy's going to put some on YouTube and say, hey, try this. And,
Yeah.
it's, I enjoy that, and from reading about it, and then I could actually physically see the difference.
Sure.
That was pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Outright. But, I appreciate how long we've been talking already, but I'd
Oh, sure.
like if you would take a moment to, we've kind of thrown out all this experiential stuff within the hobby and things we've done, but let's talk for a minute for somebody. It's like, okay, Steve, I hear you. How do I get this? What do I actually need to know? And what do I need to learn? I mean, I have my take on that, but as being somebody new, that I was like, oh, you need this thingy and that, and it'll do this. But what is the pitch when you say, hey, go out there? Somebody wants to do like a hobby, not $100 plane, but maybe they want to spend $200-300 to get into the hobby and do something with it. What do they need to have, and what do they need to know? And maybe what do you recommend maybe for that first flight?
Sure. Yeah. No, I've had this conversation many a times. I think for me, if I had to just go to straight to product recommendations, that's easy. But I'll start here. What I would say is you have to ask yourself, A, how do you want it? Do you want to try this, or do you want to get into it? It's
Okay.
two different things. If you want to try it, go get our flight simulator, get the trainer edition. I think the new one is like $50. Load it in your computer, get the transmitter, go to a hobby shop, buy a transmitter or whatever. So we sell the whole thing, even if you spend the full $150. Try it out. If you hate it and you're like, this is lame on the computer, don't get into the hobby. If you know you want to get into, if you've seen a friend do it, go to a hobby shop and go and buy a Hobby Zone Aero Scout. Yes, it's our product, but I have taken that airplane to, I have flown that airplane with kids that are barely speaking to, expert level world class pilots, and all of them have had a great experience with it. It is sub $200. Sure, I think you have to buy a battery for it now because of the FAA rules, but you're in it for like low 200s at this point. And it's an airplane that's durable. It's easy to take off, easy to land, can fly in wild winds. We fly them at our Fest in 20, 30-mile-an-hour winds. They don't stop flying. When we stop flying the big stuff, the Aero Scouts come out. It's a pusher prop airplane, so your nose isn't your nose. If you nose it over, which it's tricycle gear pusher prop, so there's almost no chance that the prop will ever hit the ground unless you're upside down. It's inexpensive foam. The landing gear are really durable. It's an overall great airplane. Go find a big field or go to a club. And yes, it's easy to say go to a club, and sure, that's probably the best scenario, but most people are not going to have a club near them. I mean, in the broad sense of the country, there's not that many RC clubs. If you can find a space to go fly and you can teach yourself to fly on that airplane, go do it. If you can find a club, 100% the best way to do it. But to me, that's the thing. And then on your first flight, your sole job is getting it up and down one time. Don't worry about getting fancy. Just fly in a pattern, take off, fly a loop, land. Don't worry about even doing two passes. Fly a loop, land. Once you do that and feel good about taking off and landing, that's the biggest stress factor I think for most people is, okay, I bought this thing. I'm about to send $200 or whatever into the air. Now I got to land it. Oh, now I'm freaking out. Go up, do a takeoff, and just go back and land again. Um, do it on a calm day. Don't let the environment factors screw you up. Do it on a calm day. Do it
Right.
in this broad daylight. Do it with no trees around if you can. Give yourself the best case for success. If you can find a field that somebody can help you with, great. The technology today, you don't have to have a buddy box system anymore. Sure, that is, if you can do it, 100%, you're going to be more successful, less chance of crashing something. But yeah, and then once you master takeoff land, even if it's not a pretty landing, go up and do. I always say start with a full racetrack pattern, then a figure eight,
Yeah.
then try to manage altitudes, right? So I'm going to fly on from this altitude, pick an altitude, and I'm going to end up on this side of the field at the same altitude. You can't see me, but yeah, don't do this, right? So you want to
Uh-huh.
work on that, and then now work on doing a circuit at the same altitude. You believe it or not, as simple as that sounds, I think good pilots these days can't do that because they don't
Mm.
ever practice the super. When you go up and fly you go get your pilot's license, you don't you don't worry about ripping passes down the runway. You worry about doing a basic 90-degree pattern and calling in the landings and takeoffs. RC people for some reason skip that because they want to go into the the excitement of, well, let's go knife edge down the runway or inverted down the runway. But anyway, yeah, try the basics there. That's really what I try to preach to people.
Yeah, right on. No, that's once you get up, I find like getting up wasn't that bad, but as soon as you're up in the air, it's like, man, this thing does have to come down, and I guess it will come down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but
Landing is mandatory. Takeoff
yeah,
is optional.
but the safe technology that was I remember, in looking at gyro, I didn't know what safe was from you guys before, but it was like, hey, there's this stability, self-leveling that if you let go, it just will maintain course, and that was like, but will it? And I'm amazed by it. I mean, that had
Yeah.
to be revolutionary for you to watch that like take over into the hobby.
It was. Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, the onset of safe, again, every new technology is always met with some resistance from the entrenched hobbyist. But when you see how good it is to get people into it, it's incredible. Even today we hear guys, "Oh, don't ever fly with safe." And I use that voice because it's like the experienced hobbyist talking.
Yeah, there you
Like,
go.
don't fly with safe because it's not going to teach you the right things. Like, no, no. You have to think of it this way. Flying with a stabilization technology on board will allow you to come back and do the hobby again. And if you didn't
Yeah.
do it like that, you would have probably crashed and never tried the hobby again. You said, I just wasted $200 in 6 seconds. I'm not doing this again. I'm done. I'm going to go play cards. You're going to find a new hobby. But
Yeah.
that gets people to continue. If you're successful at something the first time you do it, or at least know you can be successful, you're going to come back and do it again. And that's really what it's about. Forget the technology behind it. It's all about giving somebody that taste of success. Sure, you can click out of it and start to realize, oh, I am maybe not doing as much as I thought I was,
Mm-hmm.
but that's where you start to grow then, right? And so for someone who's, let's say you're learning to fly and you're in the safe technology, to exit safe technology, that my advice there is go up super high, turn it off, so try the same pattern and realize what you're doing differently.
Yeah.
Everything's a world of difference when you don't have that babysitter on board. But go up high. Altitude's your friend, and a lot of people
Yeah.
would forget that. Um, but also remember, altitude makes things harder to see. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and
true.
orientation becomes more difficult and that sort of thing. But
Right.
yeah, it's made a huge impact to the hobby. I think I mean that and Spektrum technology, 2.4 technology, which also was a Horizon innovation, uh, revolutionized the hobby. But absolutely, I mean, it changed what we know it of today, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. And obviously, I want to talk a little bit about specifically the product here as we close out. But so when people hear Spektrum, that is synonymous with Horizon, or how do you
Sure.
is that's your guys' technology that's out there, correct?
Yeah, so the Horizon is a what I call a house of brands. So we have multiple brands that make up our proprietary products. We have, and I won't list them all, but for example, Spektrum, so Spektrum is our radio brand. It's all things, uh, I guess, radio or control based. So all of our servos, so all the things that make the surfaces move, the
Yep.
receivers, the radios, the batteries, the chargers, all the accessory level stuff is all Spektrum. The airplane side varies based on the mission, right? So the brand of E-Flight, for example, is all about electric flight, easy to use out of the box, foam type stuff. We're breaking into back into balsa with it as we continue to progress the brand. Then you have Hangar 9, which is another brand of ours. That's the
Yeah.
balsa stuff. Hobby Zone was always the teach yourself to fly brand, but that's kind of blending the line now with E-Flight with our technology. But it was always the trainer aircraft brand. And still kind of is. That's what the Aero Scout that I mentioned is a Hobby Zone
Yep.
product. So yeah, we're a house of brands, and again, we have lots of other brands out there on the surface side and even on the air side. Our Blade Heli brand is also
Hmm.
Horizons. All of that stuff is developed in house, whether it's developed in Champaign or it's developed out in Ontario, California, or some of our car stuff's developed in the UK. Believe it or not, at
Okay.
the Arma
And
facility in the UK.
really, okay.
Yeah, so the way that one worked out is that we actually acquired Arma through our Hobbyco acquisition, and they reside in Moira, United Kingdom. So they've
Okay.
left them there. They don't want to move. So and that's fine.
Good for
They're
them.
great. They've
Yeah.
got their own
Sure. Sure.
facilities
Sure.
there. We'll let them develop over there in the rainy north. So
I love it.
but yeah,
I
no,
love it.
we got brands all over the map, and the Spektrum is definitely the control system brand. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, man, I greatly appreciate it. There's so many questions I have that get farther into the weeds, but I really wanted this to be an exposure and introduction to folks that follow the show. And I try and keep them abreast of just things that I'm getting into. Obviously, my son came to visit us here on the
Hey,
podcast,
buddy.
and he's getting into it. But it is a family affair for us. But this hobby and what 11 months has meant a lot to me and how I'm experiencing it's given me a lot of just a break from work and the enjoyment. I get to experience aviation again. I get going out to Oshkosh and just our circle of friends just and there wasn't a ton of RC stuff out there, and then they're like, hey, that guy, he's
Yeah,
he's into
yeah.
RC. And so it is cool how that came together. So, what's next for you? What are you looking towards? I know you said you just got into the turbines, and what's kind of
Y- You
next
know,
for you?
from I guess for me, the hobby itself, for me, it's an ever changing thing. I'm always working on something fun and getting to work on the new stuff that's not out yet. For me, I guess from that perspective, I do want to. I'm really interested in getting into a composite, nice, like I'll call it, like we call them keeper airplanes, like airplanes that are very valuable, but they last for years and years and years.
Sure.
So I'm looking into investing in something like that soon. But I mean, from a career standpoint, I'm really excited about the new role I'm in. I'm excited that I get to do events full time, like focus on events and focus on our brand experience in general. So for me, that's my next exciting chapter from a career standpoint. Is it's going to allow me to really engage more with our customers, more so than I had been, which is really crazy to think. But
Hmm.
engage with customers across the board, surface to
Yeah.
air to heli to whatever. And then on the brand experience side, getting to make sure that what we're releasing meets the expectations that I have and also the organization has,
Yeah.
and make sure the products are tip top, best in class, which they are. It's not like they needed my help, but having someone leading kind of a more of a charge there, it will be exciting to make sure it's consistent across the board. But yeah, that's kind of my hobby thing, and the hobby for me, I get into all kind of stuff, dude. I'm like, I call myself a generalist, but I am more on the air side. But I've got everything from construction, RC construction equipment and semi trucks to cars and boats and helicopters and planes. And I'm
Sure.
trying to think what else is a super obscure. But yeah, I mean, it's just like I try to do it all. A drift car, I just got a drift car. I try to do it all
Yeah.
because for me, that's the important thing of working in the industry is
Yeah.
getting to know everything and how customers want and think in all segments. Because what a car guy thinks and what an air guy thinks are two wildly different things. And I don't know, it's just fun to see the gamut of product. And I am lucky and fortunate enough to be able to do the hobby at a reduced rate of cost than most.
Yeah. That's the
Um,
reality of it. Yeah.
but I can get involved, so it's cool to see. So I really do try to stick my nose into every little thing from RC, which is cool to see.
Yeah, no, we went out in the boat 2 weekends ago. I took one of the RC boats out. Man, we had a blast just sitting on the boat, ripping around
So
on the
fun.
on the on the bay out near the ocean. So
Yeah,
no, it is a lot of fun to just kind of take it with you wherever you go.
yeah.
And you had mentioned that. So I'm in the foam world right now, but
Yeah.
it is interesting how there are some really affordable balsa, you know, really plug and play planes that are coming out ready to go
Hmm.
in the industry right now, and that's pretty cool. I definitely have my eye on that. I know it seems like from a distance there's a little like foamy versus balsa thing out
Yeah.
there, but I'm loving the foam planes, just how they fly. They look really cool. I mean, just the technology probably in the molds has come a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, if people realize the kind of money that is in foam, they would be blown away. That not from like what we can make, but like the cost to develop and design a tool for a foam airplane is in. When learned about the cost, I was like, dude, there's no way. But and there's a reason why there's only so many that are developed every year because it's ridiculously expensive to do those
Wow.
molds. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll give you every airplane like within a reasonable size, just the tooling alone is six figures plus.
Wow.
And so you start to look at the investment nature of that and
There's
like it's no joke. And some of the six figure pluses are multi six figure. It's really gets really expensive quick.
I
So
believe it. Yeah.
they're it's cool to see. Obviously, it takes a lot of investment to make something cool like that. But yeah, it's incredible the detail and the quality that we can get out of foam these days. And we're starting to see innovations there too. Like there's better foams and things we can do to make foam more durable and stronger and lighter and more dense so it looks nicer. There's all those little cool technological advancements that are coming. And the balsa
Yeah.
side, yeah, wood side, the composite side. I love the composite side because it's just a high quality airplane that doesn't dent or ding when you knock it into the trailer or go into the field or whatever. But that's
Sure.
expensive too. So, but yeah, it's all fun, man. You can talk about it for hours, and it's definitely a hobby that's always evolving from where it used to be, 50, 60 years ago to where it is now is like anything else. It's completely different. So,
Good deal. Well,
yeah.
I gotta ask you. So I have the 70 millimeter Viper. All
Mhm.
right. I like the Warbirds. I really got my eye on just the 80 millimeter, even F-16 that you guys are actually running a sale on right now.
Yep.
What do you recommend? I'm just getting into the EDFs. I'm sure
Yeah, if
there's
you're
somebody else there that's just getting into it as well. What do you think?
yeah, the so my go-to large EDF is going to be the Viper 90.
Uh
If you
huh.
already have a Viper, so that's hard for me to recommend that to you, but it is an incredible aircraft. I mean, it has like no bad tendencies. It's really good to fly. On the Warbird side, if you want an EDF Warbird, gosh, I don't know. Um, that's a tough one. I think I have to even like I almost have to pull up the website because I feel like there's so many good options. Um, what did you say you were in? Which one were you interested in?
I've been looking at some different F-16s, and you guys,
Yeah.
you have the 80 millimeter one.
Yeah.
I like the 90 size, but having the Thunderbird color scheme, my son's really into the Warbirds as well, and so
Hmm.
just getting a hangar full of the Warbirds we enjoy.
Yeah, that's going to be like our one of our larger, Warbird EDFs out there. It's quite honestly, it's a great flying airplane.
Yeah,
The only thing with F-16s is the landings can get a little hairy because there's such a
that's
narrow
narrow.
landing gear stance, and so you have to make sure you slow way down before you turn, otherwise you'll wing them over. But yeah, that's a great model. Honestly, there's probably not a better one in our lineup right now. But I
Okay.
always have to be careful because I have to go, wait, what have we
Yeah, yeah.
released
Okay,
yet?
what is actually out?
What's on the market today?
That's
But
right.
yeah, that's a great one. I'd be hard pressed to tell you a better version. Obviously, there's like I said, the Viper 90 is always my go-to EDF of like best
Yeah.
in
Uh,
class, best power system, most fun airplane. I have one. It's the only that I have an F-16, I have a Viper 90, and I still have our old E-flite Phantom, which I really love, which didn't unfortunately sell super
I
well.
found
But
one in PA actually. I almost drove up to PA because I have the one I want is a free wing one. This is a little bit bigger, but somebody had I don't know how long ago you guys had that out, and
not
everybody
very long
says it
ago,
was a
like
great
2020.
plane.
Yeah, it
Okay,
was awesome. I still
and
have mine. It's fantastic. It's yeah, I love it. It's really cool because it's super narrow. So it flies differently. It rolls quick, but it's a lot of fun, and it also has that cool high alpha approach landing. That's
uh
really
huh,
neat. So if you can find one, get one. They're great airplanes. It
yeah,
just unfortunately and oddly didn't super sell super well. I don't know if it was at a time where we had too many Warbird EDFs and it just kind of
okay.
got lost. People want it back, of course. But yeah, it's unfortunately probably not going to come back. But yeah, that's a cool one too. Definitely
Yeah,
a cool one.
no, very cool. Man, awesome. Steve, I greatly appreciate the time. And obviously, this has been a little bit different topic for our listeners, but it's something
Yeah.
that I'm very recently passionate about and will continue to probably get deeper down the rabbit hole. And if there's any way at all, the podcast, myself can support you guys, put stuff out there. Absolutely. You mentioned events. What are some of the events that people need to get themselves to that now you're going to be putting out there and be there at yourself? Where are these events at?
Yeah, they're all over the country. So Horizon has an events calendar that we right now is not really updated for the next year, but it will be soon. But if you're in the Midwest, our Horizon's RC Fest, we call them signature events, but it's our event that we put on. My team puts on. 6,000 people from the local area show up to it. It's an RC air show, but it's also a hands-on show, which is I don't think there's any other show like it in the country. But that's a great event. It's in Monticello, Illinois, so it's a little bit out of the way if you're not in the Illinois area, but it's an hour and a half from Indianapolis, 2 hours from Chicago. It's not crazy to get to.
Okay.
It's a hands-on, so you can bring your own RC car, rock crawler. We don't let people bring planes because of liability reasons, but we do a huge, awesome air show. You can fly our Aero Scouts. We have those for available to fly if people want to learn with a trainer. And you can come and try stuff. We always bring cool spectacles. Anyway, that's a great show.
Okay.
If you're in the Southeast, and check out Joe Knoll in May. You have to be an AMA member to attend, but if you find someone in the hobby, they can maybe bring you. But Joe Knoll, the biggest, best RC event in the country. It is from an enthusiast standpoint. It is like flying off a golf course. It's a country club of RC. It's beautiful, super cool people, 1,000 pilots, huge event. Also a full scale airport. It's the Triple Tree Aerodrome in Woodruff, South Carolina. And then honestly, those are the two big ones I love. Heli side, there's always the IRCHA event in Muncie and well, basically the same time as AirVenture.
Okay.
And then out west, there's not a ton, but there's some great turbine events out there. Best in the West
Okay.
Jets
Oh
is
wow.
one of
Okay.
them. That is just an incredible air show. But I don't get out there much. But yeah, there's a lot of great shows out west too. If you want to go check out some cool RC. But yeah, check out the event calendar. You can also go to events.rcnation.com and check out the events there. That's also a sister site of ours, or rcnation.com. There's lots of events there you can find. Or go to
Cool.
the AMA and find a fun fly near you. There's all their fun fly, all the events that are AMA sanctioned on the website. If you really want to get out and do it. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's tons out there. You just gotta know where to look. It's
Yeah,
just
and
finding it.
that's a lot of it is like there is. I mean, the world once you start looking for it, it's
Yeah,
amazing how deep you can go. And I've been telling our local club, it's like tell people no, come out, see this stuff. It's amazing. You might
yeah,
get into it. Obviously, it's most of them are free events to go be a spectator at
yeah.
locally. So
And if you can find a club near you, a lot of clubs have try me nights or fly nights or trainer nights. The Champagne Club here does it. I'm the president of our club at Eli Field, but we don't do those nights. But everyone there that goes to that club is an employee. So at the end of the evening, I was like, you know what, I'm
yeah, yeah,
probably
yeah,
not going to
yeah,
fly tonight. But there's clubs everywhere that you can learn to fly and show up, and they'll teach you. And if you
yeah.
want to just try it, like I said, try the simulator first. Honestly, if you can find a club near you. A lot of those clubs are really cool about using their stuff and learning to fly because they want to get you in too. They want you to join their
Yeah.
club, but they're motivated to grow the hobby, which is cool to
Yeah.
see.
No, it is awesome. It is awesome. Well, I will definitely put in the show notes, link everything up with Horizon, with you.
Yeah,
I
appreciate it.
also so you got a YouTube page yourself, right? Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, Steve's RC. It's my YouTube channel. It was a as I moved up in the organization to more of a leadership position, I realized I didn't have that creative outlet. I'm sure you can understand.
Sure.
So I built an RC channel, which is just my kind of YouTube channel where I talk about our products or other things or answer questions. And then I do some barbecue stuff on another channel called Smoke and Meats Barbecue. So very small channel, sub 5,000 subscribers, but it's fun. It's just
Yeah, it is a lot of
again, it's
fun.
another avenue of escape from reality. So
There you
yeah,
go.
check that out.
What kind of smoker you got?
Six of them. I have
Oh
five of
my,
them now.
okay.
I have Traeger Ironwood XL. I've got a drum smoker I built. I've got a Weber Smoky Mountain. I've got a Masterbuilt Gravity
There you go.
Series 800, and I've got another 40-inch, propane fired stack smoker. So working
Awesome.
on building an offset too soon. We'll be building
Really?
that up, so that'll be fun. That's my next non-RC project, maybe over the winter.
Okay.
A couple of friends and I in Chicago are going to buy all the equipment and start welding up some smokers over the winter. So
Oh,
yeah,
heck
it's
yeah.
just
Are you gonna capture it, like the build on the
yeah,
YouTube
for
channel
sure.
and
Yeah,
stuff? Oh, right
100%.
on.
Yeah,
Oh no, I'll have to check that out. Very good.
yeah,
Hopefully you cook for all your guys at the store.
yeah. Oh, I am the now new ordained cook at all the RC events that I go to. So
There you
I'm
go.
always smoking something at an event. So, but it's fun. It's
That's
all good
perfect,
fun. Lots of cool
dude.
hobbies.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the time. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again, and I hope to catch up with you at some of these events because I'll definitely be getting some of them myself. But it's awesome,
Heck yeah,
man.
man. Yeah.
So
Thanks for having me on, and can't wait to see you at an event. See you.
yeah, 100%, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, man. See ya.